Hi all, welcome back to the Sprucegate Modeling. Today I will be doing a pretty basic North African street diorama. So I'm starting out with some like a plastic sheet as well as some yoga mat that I've cut up to fit to size. It gives a pretty nice cobblestone effect. I'll be using my Panzer II and the figures that came with it that are painted in a previous video, and I've marked it all out on this piece in Sharpie, just so I've, got a basic plan. There will be a street and a little building, or just the face of the little building in this diorama. So, I know it says I'll be using 4 figures on this plan, but I think I'm only actually going to use 3, because one of them wasn't really painted up to standard. None of them are actually great, but, I'm now going to take super glue, and I'm going to glue this bit down, make sure the edges are nice and flush before you really commit to it. Otherwise it'll be stuck and you won't really be able to get it back. So that looks pretty good. I'll be adding some siding made out of spackle later, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So now I'm going to take this little curb, and I'm going to build up 2 bits of the foam. Again, just super glue them down. Make sure that they fit though, because you don't want any ugly gaps showing up that can't be filled pretty easily with filler. So yeah, just super glue them down and layer it until you get your desired height. Be careful around the super glue. I know that it sounds kind of dumb, but it's sticky. You don't know how many times I've accidentally glued my fingers to little pieces of foam that I'm trying to glue to things. And just layer it, keep layering it up. I'm gonna go too high, and then I'm gonna extend the curb across, because that's way too thick an area for the building. I now realize that. And I'm actually not trying to make this perfect, so I haven't really, used a straight edge to cut most of this. I'm trying to give it a little bit of a messy look, and as you can see, there's some rolls in the foam. So now the super glue is dry, and I'm going to be removing some of the cobblestones just to give it, a weathered look. Few cobblestone streets are 100% complete if they're not upkept, and tanks will rip up a street pretty nastily. So there you go. I've cut out a bunch of pieces. Should give a nice effect. And now I'm going to take filler, and I'm just going to make sure that there aren't any, disgusting looking gaps. This is Vallejo's plastic filler. I'm just applying it pretty large amount, and then I'm just going to, whittle it down a bit. As you can see, I have extended the curb across because the building would be way too thick. And I'm taking 2 pieces of just, basic foam. It fits nice and well, and I'm going to turn these into a building using only a little bit of other materials. So now I'm going to take a Sharpie. I'm going to mark across the bottom so that I know where I need to be, leveling the door and stuff like that. So then I'm going to draw on the door and 2 windows, and I'm going to cut it all out with my hobby knife. As with most steps in this process, one little goof up here and it will kind of ruin the entire project, just because, or at least make you need to restart the building. So, it's worth being careful with your cuts here. So yeah, just take your hobby knife and cut out these doors and windows, and make sure that you do have a plan for these before you cut. So I've decided to make all of it boarded up, because I don't really want to deal with glass right now. So I'm taking a popsicle stick and I am cutting it up into little pieces. This took a while for me, actually. I'm now going to actually carve out like a little sill in the windows so that I can fit the windows and doors, really, so I can fit the boards in without, sandwiching them, so that they fit in like flushly with the rest of the backing. So there you go. Now they fit. I'm going to lay them out, super glue them in, and all will be well. So as you can see, I've repeated that for all of them, and it's time to get fitting. Before you use any glue, make sure that it all fits. As always, it's just kind of common sense right there. So there we go. I've again decided to make them a little bit messy, just because, I don't know, I don't really want it to look clean. So I've used some filler, and I'm now adding crossbars made from popsicle sticks that I cut in half to the windows and doors to get something like that. I've also carved out little bits of little bits on the surface to make it look like shell impacts. I'm now taking some spackle wall filler that I've thinned out pretty heavily, and I am basically just going to add a little thin layer, enough that the foam doesn't really, you can't feel the texture of the foam. This is purely for texturing purposes, and I'm trying to get this pretty thin, uh, and at the end I'm going to sand it all down to make sure that nothing's too bad. So I've stuck it together, added some loose boards on the street. It's all glued in place, and it has gotten a German red-brown primer from Vallejo, and we're going to get on with painting. So I'm going to airbrush green-brown from Vallejo onto the street and curbs, go for a nice, even coverage. This is just your base coat, so we're not looking for very much variation yet. And this is also not my greatest diorama of all time. I can tell that right now. So I'm not going to pour too much time into this. This will be a pretty simple display case for, just a display stand. That's what I'm going for here. So now when that's done, I am going to paint the house khaki. The paint here is way too thin. I'm going to have to go over it a couple more times to make sure that the covering is nice and even. So there we go. That's all done. I'm going to want to give an overspray, very light with pale sand to everything before going back in with pale sand on a brush and brushing some of the, adding some variation. I'm going to brush only some areas heavier than others, and I'm going to make sure that I'm hitting all of the ripped up cobblestones and stuff just to give the effect of worn stone. So now it's everyone's favorite time. It's wash time. Yay! So oil wash. This is I think a burnt umber oil wash. Will be given to the entire street. I have not sealed the street as I want this to muddy up the entire street. I know that a lot of the times if you're just going for a panel line with oil washes, you will pretty basically just go, you'll seal it before putting it on. But, I'm going for messy street. This will also bring some of the color variation back down if you're unhappy with it. In hindsight, this wasn't a necessary step. I'm pretty happy with the color variation I achieved before this and after this, so I didn't really need to bring it back down. But I decided I'd try it, and no regrets. I'm adding a yellow ochre oil wash to the house. Tear those two things apart really because it's all 50 shades of tan. So now I'm going to paint all of the wood with flat brown. The wood won't really be, the centerpiece of this, so I'm not going for that much of a color gradient. I'm just gonna add one layer of highlight later. But make sure you get everything on the street as well as everything that is on the everything on the house. The reason I added the broken boards to the street was because I felt like the house looked pretty beat up and the street only had a couple missing cobblestones. So I wanted to add a little bit, make it look a little grittier. So there, I'm sure you can see I've gotten the entire door painted with that. Nice even coverage, don't overspill because that'll really ruin the effect. And just in general, yeah, be careful. I know I say that a lot, but when you're modeling, you can never really be too careful. It's fun to experiment on the one hand, but on the other hand, I don't want my entire house to look like it's a piece of wood. So, now I think I'm going to be adding some of the highlights of the wood here. Yeah, like I said, just one highlight layer. I'm not going for much of a wood effect. Normally, on 1/35th scale stuff, I feel like I could build up 2 or 3 layers of highlights, but, I'm just going for one here. So, just, again, no, I say it way too often, but be careful. It's fine if you cover all of the wood with this, but just no overspill. As always, no overspill. So, I'm highlighting very lightly, just hitting the edges and adding a little bit of a wood grain effect. and hit all of the broken edges, as those are kind of the most important places to hit, make it look like the wood has been snapped. So there we are. That's looking nice. Um, I'm going to move on. I'm going to make sure that I'm painting all of the house wood as well as all of the wood on the street. I know it looks like I'm spending a lot of time on this one board. I'm just trying to figure out how the highlights go. I feel like every time I work on wood, I immediately forget how to do it and have to figure it out again. It's one of those things where, unless it's fresh on my mind, I kind of have no idea what I'm doing. Uh, always have, always have a little bit of a test board down. So now I figured it out. Moving on to the house. Sharp edges only for the house, and a little bit in the middle just to add some color variation to the wood, but nothing much. Don't go overboard. I like this kind of red brown color for the wood. So now I'm gonna add a little bit of black to the shell holes that I added. Make it look like HE shells, incendiary bullets, burning shell fragments. Now it is time for the final step, pigments. I'm taking various, orangey, yellowy, tan, brown pigments, some lighter, some darker, and I'm just spreading them all around, all over this. Add some really nice variation to the street. Make sure that it is not really monochrome, which is not what you want for a street, and then do the exact same thing to the house. I love pigments for weathering. They're fun. So now I am taking my Panzer II from Tamiya, painted in a previous video, and I am super gluing it down along with some figures that it came with that I painted up real quick. Honestly, not that bad for something that only cost like $20. Alright, thanks for watching. See you later.